You're good now.
Okay, so now we're broadcasting. Well, welcome tonight. We're really excited to have you. Life's Co-Pilot has invited some absolute experts on how to pay for all this stuff and what to do and how to maneuver through all these different financial issues you're going to have to deal with aging parent or what have you. So basically, let me start off by introduce everybody. Matt Albine and Wesley Young. They're with Senior Solutions Consulting. Jeff Stinson with Stinson Law Firm. Rebecca Geyer with Rebecca W. Geyer and Associates, elder law attorney. Andrew Eintertz Law Offices, elder law attorneys, and Ron Wright and Associates, elder law attorneys. So I'm going to let you get started. Why don't we just kind of start off with Matt and Wesley? Why don't you kind of do your 5-minute elevator speech, who you are, what you do, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. My name is Wesley Young. This is Matt Albion next to me, and we've been doing Medicaid planning and VA benefits and waiver planning for about 20 years now. We handle kind of all aspects of that. We have an attorney on staff for the issues that we need there. We've been very successful with VA. We do 15, 20 cases a month. We've been able to get that going in 3, 4, 5 months. We pretty much can handle all aspects of it. We're Senior Solutions Consulting.
Well, thank you. Jeff, Mr. Stinson.
Sure. I'm Jeff Stinson. I'm a certified elder law attorney as certified by the National Elder Law Foundation. I've worked in the elder and special needs law area since 1998, starting as a paralegal, then was an associate attorney with the same firm, partner for a short time, and have had my own firm since 2013. So I'm often working with families to take a holistic, elder-centered approach to long-term care planning, so that when a long-term care need comes up, it doesn't leave an individual completely destitute. So for those that can't otherwise self-fund or insure their long-term care, I help individuals access necessary benefits like Medicaid, VA pension, or other public benefits, both in a crisis and through future long-term care needs by instituting provisions in their estate plan. Also, families wrap up their loved ones' final affairs, which unfortunately is becoming a most growing area in my practice right now for both probate processes and non-probate estates. And finally, I help folks that have special needs children plan for their child's future advocacy, care, and financial support, particularly when the parents aren't able. And other part of that is I work a lot with special needs individuals who've obtained a windfall, like a inheritance or a loss, proceeds from a lawsuit, and help protect those funds and keep their valuable public benefits in place, usually through a special needs trust.
Well, thank you. Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca Geyer. As Jim said, I'm with Rebecca Geyer and Associates, and very similar to what you heard from Jeff, I'm also an elder law attorney, and I do estate planning as well. I've been in practice 21 years, and we assist families really dealing with all aspects of retirement, estate planning, and then also, of course, dealing with the cost of long-term care. We really want to make sure that families understand the options that are available for them. Most people do not want to go to a facility, so we really try and explain to clients that there are options to allow them to receive care at home or care in assisted living, and that a traditional nursing home is really a last resort. So we deal with them about all aspects of elder law that could be dealing with advanced directives, paying for the cost of long-term care, VA and Medicaid benefits, Medicare issues, sometimes some Social Security issues as well. And we also deal with estate planning documents and full service estate administration.
Well, thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I'd say what they said was great. Just take what they said, replay it for me, it's great. Right. I've been doing this since 97. Before this, I was a middle school math teacher. You see my daughter chasing our dog behind the back. We got one of these Danish puppies, which is a cross between a Great Dane and a Mastiff. So she's obviously chasing that one instead of getting me on the computer like she was supposed to. But no, we do. I found out that this elder law attorneying is kind of like the middle school math that I used to teach. You write down what you know, solve for what you don't. Partial credit count, so pluck that low-hanging fruit and slow your brain down. So we just like these guys, we work with educating people on what they can do, what they can't do. As long as you stay in the black and white, things get a heck of a lot easier when times get tough. If you can four-corner your document, that's great. But really taking it, being 2 steps ahead of the curve, just like these guys do. Planning for today is fine, but planning for tomorrow is a lot better because, our motto is really easy. When other people have to think, bad things happen. So we try to go ahead and cover as many bases as we can. Let them know that they're going to be healthy, they're not healthy, and as my football coach always used to tell me, relax, son, all bleeding stops eventually. You're going to die, and let's figure out which parts, bother you the most at this point in time, and let's see what we can do to protect you.
Well, very good. One thing I was going to ask, this is for any of you want to field this question, or all of you want to field this question, you're perfectly cool for this. Why do people need an elder law attorney or a VA Medicaid specialist instead of just doing it themselves?
Well, Jim,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I tell clients right off the bat, I know this sounds self-serving, but I don't know how anybody can get an application through without some help through a professional. You don't know what you don't know. I feel, in the folks that are represented are such a small segment of the folks that are applying for these benefits. Everyone needs them. And I worry about not my clients, but the folks that don't hire folks because they just don't know. A lot of folks, I think, under the impression that the individuals working for these systems are the experts and they know everything. So if they tell me, no, I'm not eligible, well, then I must not be eligible. And again, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know if there's been a mistake. You don't know if they're misapplying the law. It just helps to have a professional that can say, you know what, there was a mistake here and I can help fix that.
Very good. Well, I was going to say, anybody else want to cover that one?
I was just going to say, I would add to that by saying there's so much information out there about things that relate to paying for the cost of long-term care. And while there's information out there, there's usually not a lot of good tools that tell you what steps to take first. So where elder law attorneys are specifically helpful is that they can make sure that you know what steps to take first. They're a resource into this area of the law for you. They can provide direction and connect you with other providers who may be able to assist, but will save you a lot of time and money in the long run so that you're not kind of chasing around in circles. And most of the people who are applying a loved one for some sort of long-term care assistance are usually the care providers themselves, a spouse or a child, and they need assistance. They don't need to be further mired down in details that aren't going to get them the end result they're looking for.
Very good. Anybody else cover that same area? Or?
I think that's perfect. It costs 4 times as much to put the toothpaste back in the tube. These guys said it right. It's so important to get it done right the first time with the supporting documentation and not trying to pull a fast one. You're either eligible or you're not. We know that. But sometimes it's like talking to a customer service rep in some of those places. Depending on who you talk to, they may see it a different way. So I think it's so important that you either have an attorney or a professional that can sit there and say, okay, here's what they said. Here's what they really mean. Here's where we need to go to get this thing fixed. Yeah.
Leslie,
I would say that debunking the myths that they carry in the door with them from their neighbors and their friends and their experience with their grandmother 25 years ago and the bad experiences they've had. Once you kind of get them all cleaned out, then you can kind of move forward. But sometimes they're so full of misinformation that it's hard to get to zero. So.
Well, I'll just tell my own personal story here. I was getting ready to tell right before we went on live, but I was working with my in-laws and trying to help my father-in-law get his benefits, and we worked, and we kept getting dings, and we didn't have this dot in the right place, we didn't have this dash in the right place, and so 18 months. I think my father-in-law had actually passed before we got this done. In fact, I got so mad the last ding I got that my son was campaign manager for our local congressman. So I called his office and, is there anything you can do? And I got Dan Burton's office, and within 24 hours we had it approved. And I'm going, you shouldn't have to know a congressman to get this done. And then, with my uncle, it was a totally different experience. I did go through an elder law attorney. It was a whole different experience. So So I am advocating you guys very heavily. I would have killed to have known about this a long time ago. There is a lot of, we have a lot of lookbacks. We have 5-year lookbacks. We have 3-year lookbacks. We have things like that. So could you share with people what it is that they need to be cognizant of, what they need to be doing to prepare for these things at this point? What kind of things can we do for some protection?
Well, like Andrew said, you have to kind of play it straight. Don't panic, do anything stupid. Don't hide money. Don't put houses in other people's names. Seek advice first before you act, because undoing things looks suspicious, and moving money that you may or may not get back. If you divide money between 8 kids, you're not going to get it all back. And, seek counsel and advice before you act. It's probably the best advice I could give.
And I would say identify those, if you can, to kind of take a snapshot of what you have and try to identify, particularly if you're doing in the proactive side. If your nose is rubbing up against the glass of a nursing home and we're just trying to put a tourniquet on that hemorrhaging, that's one thing. But you can be proactive, and if you can identify those assets that it would really, really, really sting to be compelled to have to liquidate or spend on your behalf, because instead of a typical 2 to 3 year problem, it's a 10-year problem. Odds are, basically, you can shelter anything. The question is, how painful is it going to be to shelter it? And maybe now is not the time to do it. Maybe there's certain things you take a chance on, certain things you don't. But I think if people can take a look at this before the panic ensues, I think it makes our job a heck of a lot easier, because people have a chance to breathe. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I think Andrew's got a great point. You plan early and update often. The thing I always add to, because that's usually the first question I get when we're talking about planning, is, well, what about the look back period on this? I've heard about that. And the thing to keep in mind is why transfers can be a big portion of asset protection planning. It's not the only way. You can plan without giving assets away. You can shelter assets without giving them away, particularly in a spousal situation where we have one spouse needing the care and the other does not. In those situations, transfer planning is really unnecessary. We can protect assets through putting things in exempt safe harbors, as I like to call them. It might be exposed out here, but if we put it in the safe harbor, it's still there and it's still protected for your surviving or your well spouse.
I'd add to that a little bit. I'm not sure of the people listening if everybody knows what that 5-year look back period really means, but years ago it was a 3-year look back period, but the 5-year look back period refers to the period 5 years from the date of a Medicaid application when the Medicaid office looks to determine if the applicant made any transfers or gave away assets which could have been used to pay for the cost of long-term care. I agree completely that getting transfers in order ahead of time is a wonderful idea if it makes sense for that client, but it's also important to note that not everything that is given away counts and creates a penalty. So if you make a transfer during that look back period, it could potentially create a penalty during which Medicaid will not pay for the applicant's cost of care because they gave away funds. But if you can show that the transfer you're making is not being done for a purpose to qualify for Medicaid, or if it is a transfer between spouses or to a disabled child or for other purposes, it may be possible to transfer assets without running afoul of that look back period. But even if you are going to run afoul of that look back period, sometimes it's worthwhile doing so just to get that penalty period started, because you can make a definite time period when an individual is going to have to privately pay for their care and ensure that at the end, not all of the assets have been spent down. I've yet to have a single person come into my office in 21 years and tell me, I can't wait to spend all of my money on the cost of care. So there are a lot of options, both from a planning perspective and for people who need immediate assistance, and you should make sure you consult with someone to explore all those options.
Well, thank you.
It might get, just a little bit, but sometimes the options for sheltering for when looking at a Medicaid application may not be the same for the VA. I mean, a 3-year versus 5 years, some things get sheltered, some things don't, some things have to, some things don't. So really, personally, I think you need somebody who understands how both of those play against each other, and then ultimately asset distribution when you die. So it's so important that you have all three of those working together, I think.
Absolutely.
Ron, are you on here? I understand that Ron Wright, we've had some technical difficulties from technology. Are you here? Okay, well, I was just going to say I was going to get him in on this as well, but I was told he was here. I can't see him. That's what I was trying to figure out. So, okay, so maybe somebody's family is like my family. Our philosophy is we never wanted to plan ahead. We basically like to procrastinate and then fuss at each other and then have all kinds of arguments, and then we procrastinate some more, and then we go into denial, and then we procrastinate some more, and then all of a sudden there's crisis, and we're like, oh my God, what do we do? Okay, if there's anybody out there, I mean, we may be really unique in that everybody else plans way ahead, 3 years, 5 years. What if there's somebody like ours that doesn't? What can we still do to help them?
That would be most clients.
Okay.
So you're not alone.
Okay.
Yeah, crisis planning is what obviously we do the most of. Unfortunately, with VA benefits, we've had a few cases approved in 30 days. It's a miracle. I don't know how it happens, but normally it's 3 months, 6 months, could be a year, depending on whose desk it lands on. So, most people call and say, hey, we want to get VA benefits. Dad's going to a nursing home. And we say, Medicaid's probably a better way to go because VA is a couple $1,000 and really isn't going to help with an $8,000 bill. So, but yeah, even with the crisis planning, there's great rules. I know Jeff mentioned spousal rules. You can protect almost everything for a spouse when it comes to nursing home planning. If as long as they're both not roommates in the same facility, VA benefits can be attained as well, depending on the situation. And then there's waiver for assisted living. So really, sitting down with somebody and finding out exactly what their long-term goals are and then kind of straightening them out and figuring out where they want to go, then, you can really help even in a crisis situation. But again, planning ahead helps, but not very few people do that because it's never going to happen to them and they're never going to go in a nursing home until rehab ends tomorrow. And we got to make a decision by Thursday. So yeah, not uncommon, but still can be pretty valuable to help out.
Thank you. Everybody else?
Indiana has some catastrophic options as well. Probably not something that we all get into today, but something worthy of discussion. If you get caught blindsided, we can explain how that half-loaf philosophy works and how, depending on the size of the estate, you're going to take a haircut almost invariably, well, most of you, but you're going to take some kind of a financial haircut before things can kick in. But nothing says that if you wait too long, you necessarily have to go broke. So there might be options depending on, again, are you married? Do you have a valid power of attorney and somebody can work for us? Are you competent at this point in time? Is your nose is rubbing up against it, but it's more of a physical thing than a mental thing? Because I can't think of a single time when there isn't something that you can do, even if it's, let's limit this pain to 5 years. Again, there's always something you can do.
What you just brought up, power of attorney, that was something that I ran into in a situation with a family member that I'm taking care of or involved in taking care of, and was in a situation to where this particular person was in the hospital not doing well, and I at that time did not have power of attorney. I am not a direct child of, and it was a kind of a stressful time, so this is kind of off topic, but this is another topic that I think that you guys need to make sure people are aware of, why they need it and what the repercussions are.
Well, we're kind of mixing two questions, Jim. The first being, what can we do in a crisis? And I think the other panelists have kind of addressed, yes, we can always protect something in a crisis. It may not be as extenuous or as great as what we could if we were doing pre-planning, but yes, we can protect assets in a crisis. I think the concept here is Medicaid has become long-term care insurance for the middle class. And if, like traditional insurance, if you haven't paid premiums all these years, even if you have to contribute towards the cost of care to protect some of these assets through like a half and half plan where you carve out half to protect and they have to use to get through those transfer penalty rules, you can still protect something in a crisis. Off on the tangent of power of attorney, it is very important to have a comprehensive, broad power of attorney. Yes, your team needs to have the authority to pay your bills and manage your investments and pay taxes and do all those administrative type things you do on an everyday basis. But it's also important to be able to give your team the authority, if you want them to do this, to be doing some of this asset protection planning. Because for the folks that wait to the crisis and haven't otherwise planned ahead, they're going to need to have their team to have that authority to do that planning at that time of need. So it's important to have not only a power of attorney, but one that encompasses all the authority that your team's going to need when the time comes.
I would add to that by saying that if you don't have a power of attorney and you have a relative that becomes incapacitated, your option is going to be to obtain legal guardianship over them so that someone has the authority to assist in handling financial affairs or making healthcare decisions for them. And while it is possible to do long-term care planning, at least in the state of Indiana, under our guardianship statutes, that planning may look a little bit different than if you had authority under a properly drafted power of attorney.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Ron, welcome to, we've been having some technical glitches here. So you've been listening in, but you haven't been able to get in. So welcome, Ron Wright with Wright & Associates, and I'll let you weigh in if you'd like to. So
I hate to interrupt such a good presentation. I feel like maybe I have to ask if I'm in contempt of court for coming late here. So I do apologize. I've been enjoying the presentation, though, everybody's presentation here. Wesley Young, I know Wesley from way back. I don't know if he remembers me when we were in the 92 building many years ago. And then Rebecca is right next door to me here. I'm sure she loves that, having me pester in the halls here and so forth. But I do enjoy the opportunity to get in here, but I can't, it's absolutely unbelievable. Everything I hear is something I would have said. But so I have to tell you that I've had many of the same experiences. I'm trying more in my practice now to get people to pre-plan for their long-term care as opposed to crisis planning. And you're quite correct. All the comments about there's much more you can do if in fact you've got some time to actually work with them. And it's a matter of watching their lifestyle, their health, what they are interested in doing, where they are interested in going, what kind of support they're having from their family members. It's really a bonding type operation. At least that's the way it's been with my practice. I started out in litigation doing things like Rebecca was mentioning, the guardianships and a lot of the courtroom activities. But now we're working on estate planning. First thing I ask people is, do you have a durable power of attorney? What type of estate work do you have? Who's caring for you, or is one of your children, are you living with them, or are you living in an assisted living facility? So getting to know those clients, and then just about everything else that's been said here today comes into play. What assets, what are their goals? What are their intentions long-term? Whether they're married, there's a lot more you can do for, as has been pointed out, for a married couple than a single individual. So I think that's about all I can say here. I'm not going to dominate the time now that I'm late to the party, but just let me say I've been impressed with everybody's presentation and enjoyed the opportunity to at least get my face on the screen for a little bit here.
Well, we're glad to have you, Ron. I have a question on this one. Let's say we've been talking a lot about pre-planning and what the advantages there are and what you can do with maybe, putting money in different kinds of revocable, irrevocable, all these different trusts and different things that can be done. I would guess that, one of the challenges that you have would be that people are afraid to let go of control, to trust, someone else in that role. What guidance and stuff can you guys help me with on that one? as they're coming into that making. What power are they giving up? What power can they retain? What power, what are they doing to protect themselves if their trustee becomes not their best friend?
Well, there are certainly some drawbacks about pre-planning, because you are right. Typically, when someone is pre-planning, they are giving up loss of control to an extent with regard to trust planning and things they might be doing. Typically, with pre-planning that involves the trust, it's going to be an irrevocable trust, and the person creating the trust is not the trustee. Someone that they trust has to be the trustee, and maybe they have rights to receive income from the trust, but they're not going to retain rights to the principal. And so it has to be funds that they would feel comfortable no longer having control over, or that they don't foresee a need, hopefully, to utilize these funds in the future. However, trust planning, I feel, does give them a leg up over just transferring these assets directly into a child's name, for example, which I'm sure all of us can relate to. It's a question that I hear weekly. Should I put my home in my child's name, or should I transfer this account to my child's name? If you do that, you're not only, from an income tax standpoint, carrying out the original tax basis in the property, which could result in capital gains if the child sells it later, but you're subjecting those assets to your son or daughter's creditors, and there is no fiduciary obligation on their part for them to protect the funds and provide for other beneficiaries. With the trust, you can ensure, especially if you've retained a right to income, that the trustee does have some fiduciary obligations, and if they abuse those obligations, then there are ramifications, and under Indiana law, which would allow them to be removed and potentially face penalties for the actions they took, which were harming toward the loved one they were supposed to be assisting.
Yeah, I think that last part is the most important. Not only does the law provide it, doesn't hurt to go ahead and put some of those in the trust itself. If you think of the trust as a set of rules, you're basically making up your own Monopoly game, and if they want to play, playing your game, they got to play by your rules. There's certain standards that you have to have in there. But there's some wiggle room in there, and I think as long as the trust, irrevocable simply, well, I shouldn't say simply, but in broad strokes means you really can't change the rules once you set up the rules and start funding the trust. But make sure those rules are set up as much in your favor as possible. I mean, you can get pretty close to the edge of the shoreline without jumping in. So I don't think that they have to give up everything. I think what Rebecca said in the last part there, I think cannot be overstated, and that is you can control from the way that you draft that trust. Yeah, you're going to give up some, you're going to have to trust certain things, but then again, if that trustee doesn't play by the rules, there's ways you can take that magazine and smack it right in the nose. So yeah,
well, that goes back to what I was saying before about a situation where you have to end up going to court, either a contested guardianship, which I've done many of those, but then the other one is a removal of a trustee, or getting a bank to step down so somebody else can take over that position. And that can be a little rough. Because I've done litigation, I like to stay out of the courtroom as much as possible. But it's good to have a good, strong trust that's well-defined, and your point's well taken. They have to abide by those rules that have been outlined for.
Yeah, so Jim, your original question, again, that everyone, it's a balancing act, and that's, you can hear all of those positions by everyone here. It's a balancing between, you do have to give up some control to protect those assets, generally through that irrevocable trust, but you don't have to give up total control. You can reserve certain provisions within the trust to be able to make some tweaks. You can control who manages that trust if you feel like the trustee isn't doing their job. You can reserve some rights back to what you put into the trust. Rebecca mentioned an income interest, and I always have a particular interest in helping folks that have family farms, simply because my dad's a family farmer, and is there a way we can protect that farm but still make sure that dad's getting that income that he needs for the rest of his life? Housing is another way that we can protect that house by putting in the trust, but reserve rights for the individual to continue to live in that house so that they're not kicked out of it because they've lost control over the house. So there is some risk in that I'm trusting these folks because I'm giving away some control over these assets, but it isn't 100%. Sometimes you can reserve some things back to be able to try to hold them accountable at least to your original intent. But the original intent is always, I'm protecting these assets, and I have to give some good faith that these folks are going to do what I hope they do. But legally speaking, I can't over direct them, or I haven't made a completed gift, and Medicaid and VA will see through that. So it's kind of a balancing act, and you got to keep working on that.
Well, that's why you hire a professional too. That way you have someone you can blame if things go south.
Yeah.
And they expect us to help them, and I mean, that's what we're there for.
Right.
Well, on that, let's kind of, I would imagine that a lot of your clients, one of the things that there's probably some trepidation and fear going into, an attorney's office or a money guy's office with the VA and the Medicaid, and trying to figure out what's going on, because you're going to have to kind of lay your own self bare in front of these people, these professional people. And, we have stigmas and stuff that go along with that. Tell me what is let each one of you answer this. When someone's walking into your door the first time or before they come in, can you kind of tell us what their experience is like, so they can, maybe we can take away some of that fear. So the people that haven't picked up the phone yet that would like to, maybe you can kind of tell us do you bite before you come, or is it that later on? So I guess that's where it goes down to. I'll let you guys start, whoever,
Jim, I don't bite. I think you can attest to that. I do recognize that, it can be intimidating for a lot of folks to come to an attorney's office, simply because many of my clients, that's the first time they've ever had a need to even talk to an attorney. So there is that just concern of something new, and the stigma, I'm sure, goes along with that as well. So we try to do everything we can to make folks as comfortable as possible. Right now, I'm still, because of the COVID stuff, I'm still trying to do most of my stuff remotely. But if we have to see somebody in office, that's where they're most comfortable. We take our precautions. We'll let them come in. I try to start my meetings. We just spend some time chatting to get to know each other. That's what I like about this job, is just listening to what folks do in their life, the hobbies, their background, and so on. So I just try to spend some time with folks just to kind of get to know them first before we just dive right in and start going over their goals. And with me, if at the end of the meeting they're not satisfied, so be it. That's why there's 5 of us on this call. Not everyone's the best fit for one person. They might be a better fit for somebody else, and if they aren't happy with me, that's great. So I try to, in other words, they're not locked in for me forever. They have a consultation. Most people will hire me, but if they don't, that's okay too. So try to reiterate that as well. Just because you're coming to see me doesn't mean you're forced to work with me for forever here. We're going to get to know each other, and if it's a good fit, great. If not, I'll let you go to one of my esteemed colleagues.
Yeah, I'll say, I remember I was invited to leave my first marriage back in 2001, catch my drift. And that was the first time I was in somebody else's law office, and I sweat profusely. I cannot stand lawyers' offices. I get it. And Jeff said it perfectly. They come in here, they chat. I even let them know, look, you're not doing anything today. Believe it or not, after spending an hour or so with me, some people don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling with me. Personality disorder on their part, surely. But we work for you. We work for the client. And if they want to hire us, they hire us. I always tell them, you know what, if I can identify your problem, you're going to trust me to find the solution. I'll tell you, here's what I think you ought to do. This is probably what it's going to cost, ballpark, broad strokes. Send them away, let the ether wear off. And if they're ready to do it, if the sting of writing that kind of a check pales in comparison to the relief they're going to get, then they're going to do it. If not with me, it'll be with one of these guys. But yeah, I think you lay it out there. You give them the answers to their questions. You wait until they're finished talking before you answer their question. And then from there on, they can figure out whether it was a good experience or not, in my opinion.
I think the time that people spend just talking about fishing or whatever their particular interests are is time well spent, because the longer you talk and the more commonality you build up with them. I've found seniors to be a bit hesitant working with attorneys, especially when they haven't done so in the past. but once they become won over, if you will, they're the most loyal and dependable clients that you have. And it's well worth the time and effort to pull these things out. I talked to one person one time, he and his wife were in, and I spent about an hour with them, much as what you were talking about as well, just spending the time with them. And only after all that time, when we got into the estate planning they wanted to do, some of that, and their long-term care issues. But only after all that time did I find out that their son was a special needs child. And the whole idea of providing for him on a special needs basis came out. But if we hadn't spent that time, I don't think he would have brought that up. They're just a bit hesitant to open up to you, and you need to know those things. And once they do get that relationship established, like I say, I've had people come back to me, a year or two later, when I just mentioned the fact that when I was growing up, I used to go with my great aunt to pick persimmons down in Putnam County. And I just mentioned it in passing, and lo and behold, the next year, she came unannounced with a basket full of persimmons coming in. So I love that type of thing. That's wonderful to see. So
she can drop by my house anytime in the fall, so.
Leslie, go ahead. I'm happy to go last.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we don't charge to meet. When clients come in or we go to them, we try to get as much of our team as possible in to answer all the different type of questions they have. We always show them every option that we can think of for them. Most of the time, they're almost unbelieving of the things that you can actually do and the rules that allow you to do that, because they've heard of so many, like I said earlier, so many misinformation has been given to them. So, like I said, we don't charge anybody to meet, and usually we meet with them once or twice or three times before they really get around to hiring us. So if they like us, fine. If they don't, that's fine. But we try to speak English, and we try to, like, Ron, everybody says, you got to warm them up first, because they're usually got arms crossed, and things you're telling them sometimes just are almost too good to be true, and it makes them a little skeptical. So, like I said, the more of us that we can put in the room to answer their questions and show them what can be done, the more they kind of warm up to it. And again, and then when our firm does charge a fee, we're a lifetime fee. We don't ever charge them again to handle redeterminations and follow-ups and changes and all of that kind of stuff. And they hopefully get comfortable with that. It's just easier to keep them on benefits than to turn them loose, get in a hot mess, and have them come right back to me with a hot mess. I'd rather spend 15 minutes doing a redetermination than having them screw up Medicaid since last November and come back with a nursing home mad and everybody mad and an eviction notice. So we've just found it works better that way, because then they turn around and refer you to their families because you've done a nice job for them over the years. So yes, they're hesitant. They're hesitant on the phone. If you can get them face-to-face, it's a lot better. It's a lot easier, and people are a lot nicer face-to-face, because people are, it's kind of like when you're in your car, you're more apt to flip somebody off. When you're on the sidewalk, you hold the door for them. So when you're face-to-face, it makes a big difference. So, usually you can warm up with people pretty quick, and the older I get, the more I can appreciate my clients and their stubbornness and their inattention and all of that as well. So somebody's coworkers chiming in, I hear. So.
Well, that leaves me for last. And I would say my approach is similar to what all of these gentlemen have just mentioned about the way they approach the situation. We have a tagline in our office, and that is compassionate counsel for every generation. And we really take that to heart. We like to meet with clients and get to know them. We want to know about their particular goals and concerns. What is keeping them up at night? What do they need immediate help with? What's the long-term goal? We also want to hear about anything particular to their families, their family dynamics that need to be taken into account in these planning that we need to do. We're very upfront also with clients about fees. Probably all of us on this call, one thing that I have noted about most elder law practices is we all tend to work on a flat fee basis, which is really helpful for clients because then you have some certainty in knowing what your out-of-pocket expense is going to be, as opposed to doing something on an hourly rate where you're wondering, you know, how much time is this person taking in order to assist me? Clients really appreciate that, especially when they're trying to budget and account for things in the current environment. But we also try to go one step beyond that. We try to be very responsive. I have been amazed over my 21 years of practice how much being responsive can set you apart from other people. Oftentimes I'll have people call me and they'll say, "You're the only one who called me back." And I'm always shocked by that. So we try to always return calls and emails within 24 hours to make sure that our clients hear from us and that they know we're there to address their concerns. Whether they're major or minor, we want to make sure that we are addressing their needs.
Excellent. Well, another question now, Wesley and Matt, I want to kick this to you guys because you're the only ones who are not attorneys, elder law attorneys. You are the VA and Medicaid specialists. I know that you have an attorney that you use to do the other stuff. Tell me more about how do people find you? How do they know when to look? I mean, I know that you get referrals from like assisted living places that need to figure out how to make people afford to be able to live there. How does someone go out finding you guys?
Take that?
Yeah, I was going to say most of our referrals are from existing clients that we've worked with in the past. We've been doing this for about 20 years now. So with the aging population, we get a lot of referrals from existing clients, family and friends, mom and dad. Also work with a select group of facilities here in town. So those referrals come in on a pretty steady basis. A lot of word of mouth, you know, like everybody else here on the panel, probably a lot of word of mouth. We do very good work, like everybody else here does, and that good work travels through the community. So then we work with somebody that has done the work for another family member, and like any other referral, that's typically what we're getting from folks.
Very good. Now back to my attorneys here. I'm going to give you guys one here. I have tried here since I've been in the senior world of about the last year and a half as far as a vendor. I can't tell you how often I've told people you need to get an elder law attorney, you need to get a VA and Medicaid specialist to help you through this process. And I get this back regularly. "Oh, I've got an attorney," or "We've got an attorney." Well, yeah, okay. You know, what do they know? What do they practice? What's their thing? So could you help me explain to these people why just having an attorney isn't the same thing? I'll let whoever do it.
Yeah, the law is simply too complex to just have an attorney anymore. I laughed when you said that. I'm a third generation attorney, and my dad was what I always refer to as a general practitioner. But the law is so specific these days, you really have to be, you know, tuned into the particular practice area. You can't be someone who dabbles in elder law because VA and Medicaid rules are so complex and they change frequently. So it's important to go to someone who is up on the current law and understands how that's going to fit into your overall goals. There's also tax consequences that have to be taken into account. And someone who does bankruptcy or divorce law or personal injury is just not going to have the appropriate background and expertise in order to assist someone properly with an elder law matter.
Anybody else want to weigh in that one? That was pretty good. I was going to say we had a wake up call. My wife fell and had a what do you call it, employee comp thing that she had to deal with, and most of our attorney friends go, "We don't even have a clue." You know, we finally found somebody that was really good, but it's a whole different language. It's a whole. You might as well be a different industry. You know, so.
Well, I think what you just said there is key. You know, I often tell people, you know, I don't have a whole lot of use for attorneys. One thing that I do like about all of us is that I think we tend to be self-preservation artists. And if you get somebody that has more than 5-6 years of experience, maybe 10 years, I don't know. If it's not clearly within their wheelhouse, they're not going to put their malpractice insurance on the line and say, "Oh, I think I can do this." I think we all know well enough that the farther you stick your neck out, the easier the aim is for that axe coming down. Besides, I'm doing somebody a disservice if I tell them, "Hey, you know what? I'll go ahead and take care of." You know, I'm glad to know that Rebecca and Jeff, you guys both do Social Security, yes or no?
I don't really do Social Security. I refer most of that out, just as you mentioned, but I will occasionally have Social Security things that come up, especially related to my special needs clients, and we will address those. So, for example, I have a case right now involving a client who had been on SSI, and it was her son that was on SSI, and he has a special needs trust that's been in place for some time, and all of a sudden SSI just canceled his benefits and determined he wasn't eligible based on his trust. And they didn't follow the Social Security rules with regard to indicating why the trust was not valid or give an opportunity for them to fix it if there really was a problem. So in that regard, we do a little bit of Social Security work, but I don't typically file for disability with clients, but I can discuss the ins and outs of Social Security. I teach as an adjunct, I teach elder law at the law school, and since we have to cover a whole unit on Social Security, I've become much more well-versed in it.
Yeah, my daughter graduated this year. She was keeping an eye on you for me, so yeah, that's good. Jeff, do you do that in Social Security or Ron?
I'm almost exactly like Rebecca. I work in Social Security simply in the confines of when I have a special needs client that's running into some issues, particularly around their trust. I generally refer Social Security applications or denials because of disability out to other attorneys, but I will work with folks who are having issues getting their trust processed through the Social Security Administration. Because of my special needs planning, I've almost been forced to know the ins and outs of a lot of these Social Security rules, but I don't go out looking for disability appeals, for example.
I think, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cut in on you here. I mean, I identify with what Rebecca was saying about the special needs clients. There's a situation where you're probably setting up the special needs trust just to make sure they're able to get their benefits. And many times the Social Security work we do is in that particular area.
See, I think those responses are perfect for what you just asked. These are elder law attorneys that say, you know what, it's not squarely with my wheelhouse. I may help you, but I'm not going to represent you if it gets to this part over here. And I think if they have their own attorney and the attorney's any good, my guess is their responsibility, find yourself an elder law attorney. I'll take a look at it, make sure there's nothing that sticks out. But I think most, unless you're talking about a young, hungry one that thinks they need to take everything because they don't know what they want to be when they grow up, I think most attorneys, once you start getting into the elder law side of things, anything beyond a will or even, a lot of them think they need powers of attorney. But other than those, I think they're going to tell them you need to find somebody else.
Yeah, Andrew, that's what Jeff and Rebecca and what Jeff, all of you have said. I think is really, really critical of the fact that you guys just said that you refer these things out to attorneys that do that. That's a pretty strong statement in and of itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, very few cases. Oh, sorry. Very few cases that we handle. We don't have a CPA firm that we're shooting out tax projections. We don't have the attorney at the table. We don't have the financial advisor explaining, is it an IRA or isn't it? Because the clients sometimes can't even tell us. Everything's taxed differently. Everything has a different surrender charge. Half the time, folks don't even know where their stuff is or what it is, or if it's, an annuity or a CD or a bank account or money market. So we almost always have a table full of people or people on the phone before we can get to an answer, because we got to know all the different parts. Like Rebecca brought up, there's probably 10 different things between houses and cars and investments and spouses and health conditions and medications and facilities and VA benefits, and waiver and Medicaid. I mean, you kind of have to be somewhat knowledgeable in 10 or 15 different areas. And, like everybody has said, you got to bring in experts, because I don't want to be the guy telling them tax consequences. I want your tax person to be that person. And I don't want to be the guy telling you what a surrender charge is on a CD. I want the bank person telling us that. So you really got to build a team of folks to really do a decent job, because you don't want to be the one holding the bag for a wrong answer. So,
yeah, Jim, the referrals, it may not just be an attorney. It might just be other professionals in the area. I'll get the question, should my mom be in assisted living, or do you think she can be cared for at home? I don't know the answer to that question. I always make the joke of, I'm not a medical provider and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. And I know that's an old joke. But in any event, my point being, but I have a resource for that. And I try to refer you, here's a private care manager that can kind of help you do that assessment, and then come back and see me when because the direction we go with your planning is going to depend quite a bit on whether this person needs this level of care or that level of care. So it's, I know my limitations, but I've tried to have a nice Rolodex. I know that's an old term, but a nice Rolodex of folks that I can connect people with to help solve the problems that I can't. And with that, I get a lot of referrals back from other attorneys. So why somebody might call me up and say, hey, I've got this real estate boundary dispute. I'll say, I'm not going to do that, but call this person. That person will turn around and call me and say, hey, I've had this client that just died and they need some help with some probate work. They'll send that back to me. So it's such, the law is just such a broad thing. I just can't imagine anyone being a general practitioner anymore. I really can't.
It would be difficult. It's kind of like, I come from a real estate background, and it's like when 2008 hit, we had two of our guys in the office one day in an absolute panic. One of them was celebrating because they had just put a freeze on foreclosures, and he was doing short sales. So that just extended the amount of time he had to work. The other guy was standing there, only worked with short sales that or houses that were foreclosed, and the foreclosure freeze completely shut down his business. So they're both in this very narrow part of the industry, but they were 180 degrees apart, in their specialty and what they did. So yes, I get that for sure. So I don't think the consumer necessarily understands that. That's why I wanted you guys to explain. So one of the questions I have is we live in I hate to bring it up because it's like beat to death, but is there anything you guys have had to do from your own practices to deal with like the COVID environment? What's going on with that for you guys real quickly?
I think I mentioned that earlier. I'm still encouraging folks to conduct as much business as we can by video conference. Obviously, there are things that require an in-person meeting, and when we do that, we accommodate folks to come in. And if I have someone, I've been real impressed. I kind of use a lot of the things I do. I use my 67-year-old farmer dad as a litmus test for a lot of stuff I do. And can dad do this? Well, then we're probably okay. If dad can't do this, yeah, maybe I ought to rethink. But I've really been impressed with the number of folks that have been able to step up and use video conferencing. I've only had a couple clients that really said, I'm not going to do that. But for those, we've tried to be accommodating. Obviously, we're disinfecting the office constantly. My staff are all back in the office, but there's only 3 of us and there's distance between us all. We wear gloves. Everyone gets a pin if they're coming for signings. We are masking. We're asking clients too. I'm not forcing anybody, but we are masking. So it has been a big change, and we're doing all we can to basically keep people safe, because we do work with either someone who is in that group that could be at risk or 1 degree away from that at-risk group. So we want to be as safe as we can, so we're not passing anything on to anybody else.
Yeah, Jim, we're trying to take advantage of the marketing opportunity here too. We have our logo on our mask here in the office.
Very good.
But one of the things that on point here about the Zoom and the remote seminars and so forth, one of the things we've learned from this whole process already, other than the joy of being able to participate in matters such as this, we're putting up a flat screen in the conference room so that some of the children that can't make it in town to discuss the issues of how their mother or father are going to be cared for, or their estate planning, or whatever those issues are, can participate in the conference in our conference room, but don't have to come from Arizona to be able to participate in the meeting. So it has some real, I'm looking for silver linings in this coronavirus situation, but that's one that we're going to keep up after this is all said and done.
Jim, one of the things that we've done is we've segued to Zoom meetings seamlessly, because we never close our office. But to Ron's point, our meetings are more time efficient now, whereas they could last 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Now it's really business from the very beginning, and most of our meetings are being wrapped up in 45 minutes to an hour. So it's actually saved us a lot of time and our clients a lot of time as well. And nobody seems to mind doing Zoom meetings. We've had a few clients come in with masks, a few clients that refuse to wear masks. So we'll do whatever they want to do, but most of our meetings have segued into Zoom without a glitch.
Yeah, I don't mind not driving to Brownsburg and Shelbyville, and I like to be in my office and one meeting after another.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned the fact that it's convenient for the children out of state to be able to participate, but I'll have to admit too, it's better than trying to explain the same plan you're proposing, each one of them individually over the course of a week or two.
Or over the
Third
phone.
or fourth
Yeah.
child you talk to at that point becomes more than just redundant. It's just much better when they're all together.
Well, my experiences have been similar to what everyone else has mentioned. We've been incorporating Zoom into our practice seamlessly. We had previously used it for the same reason that Ron just explained, and that sometimes we have children who live out of state and they do want to participate. So we have used Zoom, and through Microsoft Teams, we've had people involved in meetings, even Skype previously, and we'll continue to do that. We are looking as a firm to determine whether or not we want to, how long do we want to continue to offer remote meeting availability, and if even after the COVID-19 epidemic ends, if that's something we would want to still continue to do for at least initial consultations, because I think it has opened people's eyes that there's another way to conduct business that we might not have done traditionally. We have adapted quite a bit in our practice also. We've been lucky here in Indiana that our Supreme Court was very responsive and has allowed for remote execution of certain estate planning documents, as well as notarization through a virtual platform. And we sped up the adoption of remote notarization as a separate category for notaries as well. So we have some other things that we're adopting to make it easier for our clients to do things from their homes instead of having to come to our office. Right now, our office is only open in person 2 days a week. Everybody else is working remotely, and that's primarily both due to the health concerns of our clients, but also because some of the people in my office have young children and they don't have any place to take their children right now. So we've tried to accommodate things from both perspectives. But we are dealing, in addition to making changes to our practice from a COVID-19 perspective, it's been a hard few months because our practice especially has lost a lot of clients who were in facilities or at home to COVID-19. As of last week, I'd actually lost 22 clients to COVID-19, which has been very difficult, both for their families and for us, because we've worked with them for a long time and we're trying to help them through the administration process.
Yeah, I found the same thing. Our clients, and I'm sure yours are the same, are the most delightfully stubborn people in the world. They've been through wars, they've been through depressions, this too shall pass, yada, yada, yada. We accommodate them as much as we can. If they come in, we'd like for them to wear a mask. Like you said, we're not going to force it. And some of them just say, you know what, I like to look you in the eye, which is fine. I make sure I go to the office every day, not for any reason other than the fact that I've got 5 kids. There's no way in heck I'm staying home with them. So I'm the exact opposite. But no, I think it is amazing how readily I think we all were able to, because we had to, adapt to this. I don't want to call it the new normal because that term drives me nuts, but I mean, it is. No, I've been impressed with the clients. They need to get something done. They're going to find a way to get it done. They're going to find a way to hear us, and we're going to find a way to speak to them. So,
excellent. Well, I have one last question, and before we all go, I just wanted to say, if there's one thing you would like to tell that you've always wanted to tell people that haven't been in your door yet, the ones that you're trying to figure out how to get, Ron, you were talking about how do we reach out to people before they need us, type thing. If there's one thing you would like to tell them, I don't know if it's a cautionary tale or just a plea for them to think about, is there something? I'll just let you all hit that one real quick. Nothing?
I would just say it's never too late to plan. I mean, we hear so much about pre-planning and 5-year look-backs or 3-year look-backs with regard to VA. And I always tell clients, even if someone is already in a care facility or in need of care at home, that doesn't make it a point where there is no opportunity to do planning. And we can be a resource to help guide them through that process, both from an asset preservation standpoint and even putting them in touch with care providers and things that will assist them. Because our goal is really for them personally or their loved one, depending on who you're meeting with, to have the highest quality of life available to them and to remain independent as long as possible. And we want to do whatever we can to facilitate that.
Yeah, I'd say your life, your rules, and if you don't make the rules, somebody else will, and you're going to have to live with it.
I can't add top of either one of those. They're both good. I mean, yeah, it's never too late. And do you want to leave even beginning your estate plan up to the consensus of what a bunch of politicians decided they needed for you through state law and guardianship statutes and healthcare statutes? Don't you want to take control of your own planning? So
I'm just going to chime in on that issue though too. I mean, you've got clients out there that are hard sells. You might have a farmer in for 4 or 5 different sessions with you before he figures out how he's going to let his oldest child run the farm when he's gone and what the compensations are for the rest of the family. So it's a, sometimes too, you'll get an estate once in a while that's intestate, and it's people you didn't get to, and they still need some help and assistance. But if you can get to them and you can convince them that, yeah, if you don't write your own will or your own trust, you're going to have the state of Indiana write it for you. And I don't know how everybody else's experience has been, but when I usually tell them what that intestate law requires, makes the case. They want to sit down with you at that point, do their estate work.
Yeah, and I would say get a second opinion, because we're just amazed at how, like when you said earlier, Jim, that I have an attorney and people come to us and say, I went to my attorney and they told me to spend down my assets and come back. It's like, well, why would you come back? You don't need their help once you're broke. And between even the Sequoias of the world and the facilities of the world and Medicaid and neighbor Bob the plumber and everybody else, they'll tell you to spend all your assets. Well, I would say get a second opinion, because it's really sad when, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda found somebody else and protected even even somebody who's got $20,000. If you can protect 10 of it, that's a lot, because that's money that'll never come back again. So it's really sad when people said, I was told to spend down and that's what I did, or I did that with my mother 20 years ago and that's what I figured I had to do. So just general awareness and asking enough people and enough questions. And I'm not one of them, but I know you guys get referred to as elderly attorneys. None of you look elderly to me. But get advice until you hear the advice you like. Don't just settle with neighbor Bob who tells you got to do this and got to do that. That's the worst. I'm glad that people will come to us and at least allow us to go, hey, look, it's not like that. Rules are different. You don't have to divorce your spouse. That's 35 years ago. There's a whole bunch of things that people need to hear, and it's refreshing and heartwarming when people get to you before they do those silly things. So to get a chance to be able to help them.
I'll bet we've all had the experience of clients coming and you explain to them what they can do and they say, well, I could have done that 2 years ago.
Or for my dad, right? Right.
Yeah, and the next question's always, can I apply for those benefits retroactively? And it doesn't work that way.
Yep.
I will tell you that, one of the reasons I had this panel, and one of the reasons I always make sure that I've got somebody in your space on a panel, is it's a personal thing for me, because I didn't know this. I was actually, when I was dealing with my in-laws, this was our virgin run into the senior world. And we were told by the senior living place we went to that we had to spend down every dime before we could do anything. So we dutifully did so. We were also told that Medicaid was basically the poorhouse and we'd be the bad kids if we'd let them get to it, which of course that's all false. But we didn't know that. So we did what we were told, paid for 2 funerals out of pocket, and everything else, so I want people to be aware of what all you guys do and all that you can do for families that a lot of people do not know. That's why I want to have these panels. So, and by that, we're after our hour. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you. You guys did a phenomenal job. I was glad to have you all here. And Life's Co-Pilot will have our next event will be June 11th. And it will, I don't remember what time, I think it's noon, I'll have to check, but the June 11th will be, and you can go to Life's Co-Pilot, go to events, it's got all this stuff on there. We're doing how to help the caregivers take care of their family at home and the different support groups that are there to take care of that. So that's what it will be about. This will be on Facebook. You can find it on Facebook Live through Life's Co-Pilot. And I will send all of you guys a YouTube of this as well, so you can use it how you want to. So thank you guys all so very much for coming. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Everybody.
See you. Bye-bye, y'all.